Hi, welcome to Tales of Dread. I hope you're having a great day so far. But get ready, because the stories that will blow your mind are about to come. Just wait until you hear the first story about how a husband and wife got through an encounter. One that sends their anxiety through the roof, and while you're here, please also like and subscribe. I love you more than the moon and back. Thank you. Let's start the stories now. My wife and I have both heard this story. We both had the same thing happen to us near Mineral, Illinois. In July 2014, on a warm summer night, we were walking home from a friend's house, where we had eaten dinner. We lived about a mile from Minerals, so the walk there was nice and easy. We were about a half-mile from home. The street was on our left, and the woods were on our right. We both started to hear something big moving around in the woods, and it sounded like it was crashing around. It sounded like either an animal trying to run away or something trying to catch something. We were both watching out. We were using our flashlights. We just thought it was a deer, so when we didn't hear anything else, we kept walking. So we walked another half-mile and were almost home when we heard it again, but this time it wasn't as far away and was closer to us. My wife and I both stopped and pointed our flashlights into the woods, but all we saw was something run out of the woods and across the road in front of us. It was dark and moving quickly, but it was clear that it was something big. It was at least 6 feet tall and had a big head. It looked like it had hair all over it, but it came and went so fast that we couldn't be sure. We both faced each other. Both of our faces showed that we were scared, so we ran the rest of the way home without saying a word. When we got home, we ran inside and locked the door. Then we both sat on the couch and looked out the picture window into our yard, listening and watching for anything that might be out there. We were so scared that I pulled out my gun in case I needed it to protect myself. Then, when we didn't hear anything for about an hour, we turned on the TV to relax a bit before going to bed. Then, after a while, around 20 minutes into the movie, my wife got up to go to the bathroom. She looked out the window into our yard and saw the same huge creature standing on all fours next to a tree about 40 feet from the bathroom window. She called my name out loud. I ran into the bathroom and got my gun ready right away. She pointed out the window, and I could see the thing standing there and looking back at us. But it went away again just as quickly as it moved the first time around. And let me tell you, we didn't sleep much that night or for about a week after that. I don't know if it was real or just my imagination, but after that night I kept hearing noises around our house, like branches breaking or things being moved. But neither of us saw anything else after that. Even though we only saw them twice, that was enough to keep us on edge for a very long time. I don't really know what we saw. We still think about it, and we don't feel safe walking around outside at night. Even now, my wife still takes mace with her everywhere she goes. So, this has really changed both of our lives, which is why I'm writing to you. I hope that not too many of you have to deal with this, because it really can. January 5, 2009, Kobuk River, Alaska. Since I was a little kid, I've always loved January. It was one of the few times I got to spend time with my father, who was away from home most of the year. He worked as an oil driller on Alaska's North Slopes, so I only got to see him for short periods of time during the year, except from mid-December to February, when he had time off. I was very close to my father, even though I was a girl. Even though I was a girl, we both loved the outdoors, especially fishing. In fact, he spent most of his free time looking for the best place to fish. He always tried to find one with a good mix of things to see and fish to catch. When he took a break, In 2009, he went to Alaska and found a great place to fish. He said it was as big or bigger than the town we lived in. He said that the river split into different channels over a large area of land that was hundreds of miles long. I couldn't stop thinking about how many different kinds of fish there would be in such a long stretch of river. I started to feel like all of our other trips and fishing trips would pale in comparison to this one, and not just because of the fishing. One of our fishing trips would also be the first time we went to Alaska, and this trip to the Kobuk River was the perfect chance to learn about a new wild place. Even the drive through Alaska was full of beautiful sights, and my dad took the most beautiful route he could find. As I looked at the majesty of the foothills and the beauty of the forest-filled landscapes, my mind wandered. We left our house with enough food for a week, and we also brought our reliable kayak to make fishing more fun. To have the best and safest time on your boat, you should always know how it works. We planned to follow the path that some of Colorado's first settlers took, and the brochures we brought with us said there were lots of places to fish and hunt. As we went through these less traveled paths, there was even a chance that we would find something important to archaeology. At first, it was hard to get to the area, and I'm sure my dad would have liked to have brought more people with him than just me. I was still too young and too small to do much to help. We were saved when we got to the village of Ambler, where my father was able to leave our small kayak behind and rent a good-sized raft for the rest of our trip. A guide warned us to be careful of the rapids and gave us a map so we could know when we were getting close to them. He also told us very seriously to watch out for bears coming into our camp at night, even though they were often hunted and usually stayed away from people. You could never be sure. I also got the feeling that he was about to warn us about something else, but stopped himself at the last second. I didn't know at the time that we'd soon understand what he was talking about. Along the way, we saw a lot of things and saw other hunting groups setting up their camps on the shores. People were brought to the rivers by small planes that flew overhead. We also saw other groups of rafters who were fishing. We got to Ambler on Friday after floating for 3 days along the many side rivers and tributaries of the Kobuk River. On the shore, we saw an open area where there were no hunting parties or fishing companies. It was around 3 p.m. in the middle of the day, and it looked like a great place to start a small fire and cook lunch. The trip to this spot was rough, and the currents kept us far from the shore. As my father rowed the raft toward the shore to land it, a large caribou came running out of the dense forest just a few feet from the open shore. It stopped and stood still at the bottom of the river right in front of us, but when the trees behind it started to shake, it quickly jumped into the water and started swimming straight towards our raft. We looked at each other and thought we were seeing something amazing. We wondered what else was going to come out of the forest next. We were both interested in the caribou, but we also wanted to know what kind of animal or hunter was chasing it and making it so scared that it started swimming towards us. My father told me in a whisper that he was afraid that either a bear would show up or a hunter would start shooting at us, but neither of those things happened. To our horror, a huge, two-legged animal that looked like a wolf poked its ugly head out of the forest as it ran into the open land. It stopped briefly to look around, and it quickly found the caribou in the water. It made a blood-curdling howl that was like nothing I'd ever heard from an animal before. It almost sounded like a person. The caribou's eyes were wide with fear, and since it kept going deeper into the water, we were worried about where it might be going. The wolf-like creature ran quickly toward the water, stopping only when the water touched its weirdly shaped legs. It cried out because it couldn't get to the caribou. It was clear that it was his prey because it had long, saliva-dripping teeth hanging out of its mouth. We moved deeper into the river, hoping to catch a current that would take us away from the area, and we gave the caribou a quick glance. It looked like it had the same idea. The wolf dog thing was also getting ready to go into the water, but I quickly thought of throwing some of the fish we'd caught at it to try to get its attention and keep it from going into the water. This seemed to work, which was good. We finally caught a current, and as we drifted away from the wolfman fish creature, it stopped chasing us when a fish came close. We drifted on our raft for hours until we came across a big hunting group on one of the shores. We must have looked like a mess, because they were happy to let us join them. We were clearly shaken by what had happened, and we told them what had happened. One of the group told us, "We had just seen the legendary Dogman of Alaska, a dog-human hybrid who was said to roam the areas of the Kobuk River where most men wouldn't go. He said that we were lucky to have seen it. We didn't feel lucky, though, because we were so close to the creature and could see that predatory, cunning look in its eyes. I really believe that dogmen have moved into the area on my property and pushed out the small family of Bigfoot I've lived with for more than 20 years. Since I can remember, my house and most of my family have been in the Matilla area of eastern Oregon for almost all of our lives. I have lived in this house for a long time. It was given to me by my family. Even my own children grow up here. Not long after we moved in, we found a small, friendly family of Bigfoot on the far back side of the property. This is because our house is right next to the U.S. Matilla Forest. They sometimes come to us for food, so we put out apples, bread, and other things that they find funny and eat. We've always made sure to treat them with respect, leave them gifts, and leave them alone. Usually, they come to the area in the spring and summer. In the fall and winter, we haven't seen them, or at least we haven't noticed them. As far as we know, they've been here for about 15 or 16 years. We would see a big male, maybe 8 or 9 feet tall and very wide, like a linebacker, as well as a much smaller, shorter female and a young one. We've never gotten a good look at either of them up close, but we've seen them from a distance. When we leave them gifts, we put them in the middle of our property, far from my house, so they feel like they can get them. Everyone always takes our gifts. That's a good thing. As many Bigfoot stories will tell you, they've always kept to themselves and never tried to hurt us, come to our house, or bang on our windows. Her family is also very respectful of their space and property. Even when my kids were young, they never played in the woods where they lived out of respect. But in the last few years, we haven't seen them even in the spring and summer when they usually come out. Instead, we've been seeing something else. Something that we think is a dogman. After doing some research and figuring out what it is, we've been dealing with the fact that my youngest son, who is home with a virus right now, has been exploring the woods and keeps seeing the same thing. I just want to say that I saw this big black wolf for the first time in early 2019, in March or April, which is when this family should start to show up. But instead, we saw this, and one of the first things we noticed was how few deer there were in this area. So many white tails are there. That's not funny at all. But around this time, we noticed that a lot of them had left, which we thought was strange. This is a good place for them to live, have babies, and eat. So, when I saw this big, straight-backed black wolf walking away from me, I knew something wasn't right. In the spring and summer of 2019, being outside became very scary. I remember that when I was doing yard work at the far end of the property in May and June, I would often get a horrible feeling that I never had when Bigfoot was around. Just this intense feeling of being watched and almost hunted, like a bear or other large predator is following you. I didn't like how it made me feel. This feeling lasted well into the summer, up until late August, when it got so bad that I stopped doing yard work outside because I didn't want to deal with it in the fall, around October. When it started to get cooler, I could go back outside without any problems. This worked fine until winter. Then, when the virus hit in March 2020, things got worse. My youngest son was now home from school full-time and decided to do a lot of exploring outside. He didn't believe me when I told him there was a big black wolf back there because he still thought there was a Bigfoot family. After going back there several times in April and May, he told me that he had also seen this big black creature standing up. He said that he had seen more than one of them, and that he thought they were a pack. After going back about 2 or 3 miles, he found many dead deer. He said that most of them had been eaten and torn apart, as if a large, hungry predator had gotten to them. And there isn't much wildlife around. There aren't many deer or other animals, and there aren't any tracks. It seems like something must have driven away almost all the animals and birds in the area. It was really creepy. At first, he saw huge dog tracks, and after spending more time and going further back more than once, he saw a pack of these things going on both 2 and 4 legs. He felt safe and secure because he hadn't been seen, but he said that if he had, he would have been so scared that he would have run away. That wasn't the first time he had seen them. As I told you a few paragraphs ago, he had seen them more than once during the spring and summer, from the back of our property to further into the woods. Even though these things have scared him, I have to give my son credit for being pretty brave. He still goes back there because he wants to see them, admire them from afar, and I think he really wants to know what they are and what they are all about. But there is one thing we know for sure, we know exactly what they are. They must be dogs, dude. I mean, they fit every description we found online, and their heads are way too big for their bodies. By the fall of 2020, they were gone, too. And now that it's March, things are starting to get going again. Last week, my son saw one of these things coming up to the house. Then, all of a sudden, it seemed to vanish. This happened in the early morning, as the sun was coming up and he was making a cup of coffee. He said he saw its big body coming up to the house, but when he turned around to look at it again, it was gone. He said that now he's worried that these things will come up to the house and try to get in. I'll try to let you all know what's going on. Thank you if something crazy happens.